Hello, everyone, and welcome to the third talk in Music Network's Professional Development course for musicians taking charge of your performance career performing online. My name is Sarah Ledridge, and in just a moment, I'm going to introduce Simon Peter King to present on the subject of optimizing your audio. Since graduating from Leeds College of Music, Simon Peter King has carved out a reputation as a technical and uncompromising jazz guitarist and multi-instrumentalist producer. Simon garners a following as a player online, and his AV production work has been in demand from such high-profile clients as the City of Birmingham Symphony Orchestra, Northern Ireland, and Ex-Cathedra Choir. Just to say, everyone will be sent a PDF after this presentation, which will contain a summary of Simon's key points and links to any websites, etc., that he might mention. This webinar is also being recorded and will be available to view on the Music Network website from January. We'd love to hear from you, and Simon will have time to answer questions at the end, so please do type your questions into the Q&A function, not the chat box. If you're experiencing any technical difficulties, let me know via the chat box and I'll try to help. So now I'm going to hand over to Simon.
Hello, thanks very much for joining us. I'm going to be hopefully breaking what is, on the face of it, quite a complex and multifaceted subject down into three important parts. I'm going to be looking at lighting, which I consider to be the primary issue and the primary thing that people can improve their video content with. I'm going to be looking at equipment, and I'm going to be exploring all budget options from £0 through to £500 to £750 investment. So kind of depending on where you want to take your video work and how you want to integrate it into your career. And finally, I'm going to be looking at some basic editing. I'm going to be talking about some editing software, and I'm going to be looking at sort of the different formats, PCs, Macs, tablets, those sorts of options as well. So without further ado, I'm going to dive straight in with what I consider to be the thing that people don't do very well most often when they first switch to transposing their music workflow to an online or video content. Now, I'm going to be simultaneously discussing live streaming and also editing video content for sort of in a pre-production type of situation. The two are fairly interchangeable, and I understand that Mairead was talking about this from a similar kind of viewpoint with the audio side of things. So I'm going to hopefully mirror what Mairead has covered as well. So what we're going to be looking at are the real nuts and bolts. We're going to be looking at actual lighting, we're going to be looking at camera settings, we're going to be looking at maybe if you're using your phone, making the best use of your phone, and sort of some of the things are painfully simple and obvious, but often people forget about these things, and it comes through on the video render. So what you're seeing hopefully now, which would be rather embarrassing if it wasn't, but hopefully what you're seeing now is a nicely lit scene. I've sort of taken time to sort of put things in the background so it actually looks relatively visually appealing apart from my face. Hopefully everything else does. So we're going to be talking about screen composition, and that is exactly that. So I've got things like guitar amps, drums, so everything's in mirror here. I've got keyboards, that kind of thing. So it signifies music performance, so it signifies what's hopefully going to come. A big part of transposing your workflow as a performing musician to an online or video format is standardizing your content. And what I mean by that, in the sense that when you start a channel or you start a series of live streams or you have any sort of continuity with any video work, what is a really good thing to aim for is consistency. Now, consistency of the kind of studio set that you're kind of building for yourself, consistency with the content, consistency with the sort of quality that you're aiming for. Now, what's always good is to model ourselves on the best here. So if you look at the successful YouTubers, these are existing technologies, YouTubers and people who are kind of involved in video content creation. They have this kind of thing. Some of them are quite basic, you know, some of them are just you know, a guy sitting on a chair with a guitar on his phone. But some of these channels have like 1.5 million followers. So they're very successful in the way that they transfer their personality and their workflow onto this little screen here rather than face to face, which is, let's face it, most of us are more familiar with. Certainly in my generation, I grew up as a performing musician, and I only took to video a decade or so ago when it was sort of becoming a thing, when YouTube was becoming a thing, and when you could actually have a career as a musician online and on social media. And that's very much the case now, and due to the situation that we've all been thrust into, it's even more relevant now than ever. And hopefully, and like I said, if I'm going too fast at all or I'm covering things too quickly, there is a Q&A, and I'll be sticking around for quite some time at the end to answer questions on all of this stuff. So let's have a little talk about building a set. So when I talk about building a set, I mean, take this as an example. So what I've done is I've sort of strategically placed lighting in certain places to balance the screen off. And I also have lighting coming from either side. Okay, if I switch to this camera here, this is sort of looking to my left, and I've got a panel light here. And also on the other side, I've got another panel light here. So I've got them on two different kind of color tones. So I've got like a nice sort of bluish kind of light here and a yellow light here. So it's introducing color, introducing contrast, and that's what we want in a scene. I've got this, I've kept the window open here. I'm going to talk about that in a bit. Natural light, it can be a bit risky because if it's a really sunny day, then you can have all of this massive wash of sunlight. And I've got this nice, sorry, I'm a mirror. I've got this nice warm yellow softbox in the background. All of these things were very, very cheap indeed. And they just add a lot of interest and contrast and color to your scene. Okay, and these are things that you can leave set up as well. So every time you go to do your whatever it is, your piece to camera, or if I'm going to talk about recording live concerts in a bit as well. The same sort of principles apply really. When we're looking at making sure the colors pop, making sure that the scene is well composed, all of that kind of stuff. It's basics. But it can really add another 30 or 40% onto the sort of the impact of your video. Standardizing, what we're effectively doing here by standardizing your video content is we're creating a brand in a way. So people will immediately recognize you. And if you're using different colors and sitting in different places all the time, then that is going to take away from the consistency and the continuity of the kind of brand that you're developing. If you're looking to have a YouTube channel, ideally you want the same sort of thing time after time, so people know what to expect. It's like same sort of thing with restaurants. I mean, even ordinary restaurants, people will go to because they know it's going to be okay, you know, or a great restaurant that's great all the time they'll go to because they know what they're going to get. If a restaurant is great one day and dreadful the next, no one's going to want to take the risk. And it's the same with with your content creation as well. So if you're even sitting like the most successful guitar YouTuber, I think his name's Justin's Guitar, I think it's called, something like that, and there's like 5 million subscribers, and it's just him on a desk with his phone. But it's the same every time. And he's a great presenter, obviously, he's very good. But so what we're aiming to do is standardize our content and effectively build a brand with the visuals that we're creating. And we're doing that via creative lighting and composing the set well, i.e. having things that are appropriate, guitar amps, drums, keyboards, or, you know, things that are relevant to your content. And sometimes you don't necessarily even have to have that, providing it's the same every time. That's the sort of aim of the game. Now, I do have a really fancy backdrop. Usually I film towards the camera that you're looking at now. And I have a very uniform industrial kind of effect backdrop, and I film sort of towards this so people can actually see the computer screen. The nature of the webinar that we're doing, I need to see the screen, so I've had to set up this way. But backdrops are a really, really useful and, again, very sort of cost-effective way of achieving a standardized look. Okay, so what I would suggest there is that you think about your desk, you think about the backdrop, whether you want a bright backdrop or a nice kind of wood effect type of thing. It can really clean up the scene, okay? Unlike this, 'cause I've got a bunch of soundproofing in the background here, so this isn't ideal, but what I've tried to do is to try and hide that. And there's lots of things you can do to sort of, to kind of do that. You can change the exposure on your camera like this, so that you hide those kinds of things and you highlight the things that you want to be clear. There's lots of ways of doing that, and we'll get onto that in a bit. So that's the sort of single thing that I would suggest is very easy and cost effective to change immediately. Okay, because if we sit down for half an hour and think, right, okay, we're going to set this desk up nice. We're going to have a table lamp. We're going to have a lava lamp, one of these kind of retro lamps here. It's going to add interest to the scene immediately. It's going to add color. It's going to catch people's eye. And it's going to, the most important thing is it's going to maintain the viewer's attention. That's the thing that we're aiming to do. And there's loads of ways to do that. As a presenter of the content, you can do that with your intonations and tonality and sort of bringing across your personality as a presenter, but also visually as well. A lot of that will get overrun if the actual visuals aren't taken care of. So making sure things are in focus and making sure that you've got a nice balanced scene again. I've got a PDF sheet which hopefully Sarah's going to share just with some of the bullet points of this. But those are the sort of key points with that. Lighting and screen composition is a thing that you have to have in your mind when you're producing this thing, and then when you're producing the content, that is. And then when you sit in that spot, everything's in the same place, the lights are in the same place, and everything as a teacher and as a tutor, it's going to relax you more because you know those things are taken care of. You're not going to get to the end of a half an hour piece and find that you've forgotten to put a light on and everything's dark, and all of that kind of thing. So all of these sorts of things, they're going to add 5%, another 5%, another 5%, and they're going to increase the quality of your content overall. Now, it is actually surprising the fidelity of production that you can achieve with just a simple smartphone. If you're kind of asking a camera sensor, I'll talk a little bit about camera sensors now because I think it's appropriate. But everything that we do when we create content using a phone, any one of these gadgets, I'm going to go through all of these in a bit, it's passed via a camera sensor. And it's one of the great achievements of the last 30 or 40 years is digital camera sensors. Now, they are improving all the time, but we still want to make sure we're not going to make them work too hard, you see, because when a camera sensor has to work really hard to expose a scene that's not been exposed properly, artifacts are introduced and graininess and fuzziness and lens flares and all kinds of things will occur. Okay, so think of it like a person, your camera sensor. You want to make its job as easy as possible. That is, create a scene that's really nicely exposed. I feel slightly embarrassed now because the sun has come out here and there's this great white spot in the corner here. Sorry, everything's in mirror, just here. And that is a little bit distracting now. So, well, I'll leave it for now because the camera might fall off the thing. But this is an example of having a scene which has a nicely balanced exposure, kind of for the most part, and then bam, you have this big white spot in the corner. And I'm asking the camera sensor to expose for dark areas, for kind of mid-tone areas, and for this great big spot of daylight in the corner. So these are the kind of things, especially with live view on phones, where we can actually monitor. We can actually monitor what we're videoing in real time. We can see these spots and we can preview. So if I were to look at that scene, I'd be like, oh, great, there's a great big spot of sunlight there. So we're either going to move the camera, or we're going to close the blinds, all of that kind of stuff. So blinds are a really useful thing as well. If you're in a space where you have natural light that extrudes often, like I do in here. Some cheap blinds can really help, and then you can have a consistent workflow with your lighting that won't be interrupted with on the rare opportunity that you get some nice weather. Unlike today, actually, it's very bright, but if there's a weird background noise, it's because there's hail on the roof. So apologies for that. So just to recap on that section, which I believe is a really critical thing, building a well-lit set. Now, I use the word set because that's exactly what it is, and it's sometimes. Sorry, I'm just reading Q&As. I shall have to turn off the Q&A. I'm getting distracted by questions. So think of it as a set, as a TV set. That's what we're doing here. And you'll see some of the successful YouTubers, they will literally have stuff that they never use. It's just there to make the set look good. You have guitars that you probably never play. You have some violin hanging on the wall or a mandolin. You have things that are photogenic that you can put to make the set more engaging. Lighting is a big one. This thing I find really useful, these soft boxes, this soft box here was about 20 quid off eBay. And it creates a nice little backwash and a nice warm kind of yellow light. Yellow, blue, green, and pink always work kind of nicely together. And that's why you see some of these established technologies, some of the successful YouTubers will be using a combination of blue and yellow lighting. It's not complicated, and these things are very cheap. You can buy soft boxes for 20 quid, one with a blue or white bulb, another one with a yellow bulb, and there for 40 quid you've got a complete lighting setup for pieces to camera. And actually on a live situation, if you're looking to record a concert, I've often used these to record live concerts as well, to highlight performers if it's a trio, have lighting sitting behind performers, which creates nice contrast, and hopefully you'll see my great big bald head here. You can see the outline rather than it being fuzzy. So always light things on the 45 as well, 45 degrees. So never have, I can't demonstrate it, but I'll try and simulate it with a torch on my phone. If you light things straight in front of you like that, you look like you're in the headlights, okay? Likewise, if you light from behind, that's no good to anyone. But if you light from the side, like these two lights here, if I switch you to this camera here, excuse my drink. So this lighting is on the 45. So as I'm looking at the screen, 45 degrees or even 90 degrees. And likewise with this one, it's on the 45. So you get this nice kind of shadows and all of that kind of thing showing up in the right places, which is a way of someone who looks as unremarkable as I do, looking relatively presentable on the camera. And it also won't distract from the content that you're hopefully going to create. So if you're holding a guitar or a piano or a violin, or you're lighting an entire band, lighting an entire scene, then what you're hoping to do is enhance the performance, not detract from it. Okay, so build a well-lit set. Standardize your brand, and that's what I'm going to call it. I know it sounds a bit 90s business speak, but that's effectively what you're doing, because when people tune in, and you want repeat viewers, you want customer loyalty, you want viewer loyalty, you want people to come back. So this is a way of achieving that consistency. So even if people thought, well, it was quite good, they'll probably watch you again. And if you're exactly the same, if you're quite good again, they'll watch you again, because they know they're going to see something quite good every time. Rather than seeing something really good one day and then dreadful the next. So with the light positioning, as I've briefly spoke about, you can sometimes get away without buying any lighting at all. If you have some effective table lighting, I mean, I'm using some table lights. I've got a table light behind my screen here, which is great and adds a nice, I don't think you can see it on this camera, but it's down here. It adds a nice little blue wash to the back of the screen, and it has sort of achieves the same sort of thing as this softbox in the background here. So you can use lights around the house. You can steal your partner's bedroom table light and make sure you put it back, obviously, but you've got the option to sort of do that, and it will add interest. So instead of a lava lamp, you can have a table light. I've got a little Christmas tree up there as well, so make things seasonal, all of that kind of stuff. So these are things that you can do that don't cost anything. Now, lighting is hugely expensive. It can be. It has the potential to clean out your bank account. A great sort of middle ground for me I found are these panel lights, which again I'll show you. These are about 180 quid for two, and they come in a matched pair, and they come with stands. And I found them really invaluable for loads of different situations. They're incredibly bright. This is on about 20% of what it can do, and it's really nice and bright. So I use these for lighting live situations as well, and I'll give you a little preview of some of the live stuff that I've done as well in the course of the next hour or so. But I found this a really useful investment. Okay, so this is a kind of, if you want to sort of improve things without spending a fortune, this is the kind of thing I'd recommend. So lots of people think that to produce really good content, video content, you need to spend a fortune on cameras. It's not the case. There are things that come before that. The cameras, most modern cameras, even phone cameras and iPhone and Android phones are incredibly good these days. The sensors, really, it's a super competitive area of camera phones. So they're improving all of the time. So you'll find that, for most scenarios, phone cameras are really good if they're sat on a nice tripod, which you can get for about £5 on eBay. And you can sit them on a tripod, put them on the best settings. Most phones record in 4K these days anyway, any day. And you can get a really good, result, providing the scene is well lit. Okay, the sensor in a phone camera is minuscule compared to a DSLR, which I'm using as my main camera here, and some of the sort of what are known as crop sensor cameras, which are sort of half and half between a phone and a full DSLR. So lighting is the most important thing. With the video side of things, most of the thing, 80% of it will be taken care of with good, sensible lighting. Okay. Now, I've sort of spoke about them. I'm just sort of looking at my checklist here. We've got backdrops as well, which are really important, but usually they're just important as a kind of color mat, if you like, and they're a thing that will be repeatable and add consistency to your content creation. So the lightings, I better crack. I'm awful for rambling on. I can talk all day about all of these things, so I better move on. Equipment is the second really important thing that needs to be discussed. Now, I've touched on the sort of misconception of spending a fortune on cameras and maybe how that's not possibly the right way to be thinking about things. I'm going to be discussing 3 levels of investment here, because camera equipment, filming equipment is like a TARDIS for money. It will just suck your bank account dry if you let it. So I'm going to be talking about 3 levels of investment I think are pragmatic. 0, that is using only your phone. £100 to £250, which is for, I would guess, most musicians that find themselves in the scenario that we're in now, where to maintain relevance in the meantime, until hopefully the performing scenarios that we're used to are re-established, they're looking to transfer their teaching and performing workflows online, or via Zoom, via YouTube, via any of these things, and hopefully taking things up a notch so that the sound's good and the visuals are nice and clear. Okay, so £100 to £250 kind of bracket, and the final one, which there's no point really talking about kind of investing thousands and thousands unless you're fully intent and have a fully scripted business plan on using digital content for the next 10 or 15 years. There's no point investing in that sort of money, because these days, again, one of the nice side effects is that camera and film technologies are really, really competitive. Okay, so camera sensors are improving all the time, lighting is improving all the time, and actually streaming devices like the software, streaming software like Zoom is increasing in fidelity all the time as well. So my third level of investment, which I think is realistic and pragmatic, is £500 to £750 or euros. So those kind of 3 categories. So let's discuss ways that you can really quick fixes that for your content creation with 0 investment, or to maybe kind of £50, something like that. So hardly anything, nothing that's going to break the bank or particularly upset any kind of workflow. Make the most of your camera phone. Okay, this is the big one that everyone forgets, and I see it time in, time out. Clean your lens. Okay, that will solve 80% of the issues that you're having with producing content with your phone. If you've spent money on lighting and you've spent a couple of hours designing a nice set with some nice coloured lights and trinkets all the way around, and you set up your phone and you record, and there's a great big sausage sandwich smear across your lens, or someone spilt some coffee on it, or some kind of sugary sweet detritus all over it, it will count for nothing, because all you'll see is a hazy thing with loads of light smears and all of that kind of thing. And it takes about 2 seconds to remedy, and it will improve the quality of your phone's output immensely. So either use a alcohol cleansing cloth or just a simple wipe, because these things are kept in our pockets all the time, and we're constantly on them, and we're grabbing the thing and inadvertently touching the camera lens, and it's introducing artifacts and grease and all of that kind of stuff. So it's the number one protocol when you want to use your camera phone and you want to have it at its best. Make the most of it. Clean your lens. Okay. Now, the second one is ensure the settings are going to yield the best result. Now, there's some really useful things on phone cameras. Now, if I just quickly browse into my phone settings, you'll notice the resolution. And usually the 4:3 aspect ratio, which is kind of pretty much what you're seeing now, is a good one to go for. A lot of phone cameras these days have options for recording in 4K. Now, if I just go to the video, obviously this, I think, is pretty much the same as on the iPhone. But when you go to the video setting, you'll see 16:9, which is actually, I correct myself, this is the 16:9 format, what you're seeing now. The 3:2 is slightly kind of cropped on either edge. So most phone video cameras will default to 16:9 ratio, as it's 16 across the bottom, 9 across the top. And they'll record in 1080p, which is basically the pixel count for the shortest edge. Now, you'll hear people talking about this all the time, 4K, 1080, 720. Now, these are just referring to the pixels along the shortest edge, which is this edge here. So this is a 720 megapixels along this edge here, okay, and 1080 across the bottom. Now the next stage up, if you see 1080, that'll be 1080 across here, and then 1920 across the bottom. That is considered HD. Now, 5 years ago, when HD was the best you could get in terms of tellies, that is HD. So HD is 1080 by 1920. And most phones will record in 1080 by default. It's more important, I think, to talk about the frame rate. Okay, now if I just scroll into my phone settings here, forgive me, it'll take a while to focus, if it ever focuses. Yes, there we are. So you'll see on this side here a number of different frame rates. Now, this is really important for a number of reasons. 30 frames a second, which is the kind of default for most phones, is going to get you a regular looking video, a slightly cinematic look to it. Now, if, for example, you could set the phone for 5 frames a second, it would be very juddery, obviously. And you get what's called motion blur in between the frames. Now, maybe 15 frames a second, 20, 25, you're getting slightly more accurate refresh rate in the image. So as I'm crossing my hand across the screen now, you'll see it blurring. That's because this camera is on 25 frames a second. Now, the phone's recording at 30, which is very similar. If you increase that to 60 frames a second, what you'd see is very, very fast refresh rate. So you wouldn't see any motion blur at all. For some instances, like if you're going to return that footage to slow motion or whatever, or you want that kind of very immediate look to the thing, then that's recommended. Otherwise, stick to 30 frames a second. I'm conscious, I'm rambling on again. I'll stop talking about frame rates. So 1080, 30 frames a second. That's what to aim for with the phone's default settings. Don't worry about 4K. 4K takes up a huge amount of space. For the most part, you're not going to see much difference on a phone camera sensor in any case. You only really notice 4K resolution when you're watching on a 4K screen anyway, which most people won't find themselves in a situation of anyway. If they're on YouTube, occasionally you have the option of 4K. If it's recorded in 4K, you can click on that. And it's nice, but you're dependent on a fiber broadband connection for those sorts of data transfers. So 1080, 30 frames a second, clean your lens, okay? Stick to those two things and you'll always get pretty high resolution images if you're filming well lit, well composed scenes. Now, if we're talking 0 to sort of 20, 30 pounds investment, a really useful thing to have, a gadget, is a little tripod. Something to stand your phone on. Now, we all hate selfie sticks. They're a horrible thing about our era, but they can be quite useful, especially if they've got a tripod stand on them, okay? Now, if we have a means of standing the phone, using the front camera, which is the better one, by the way, the front-facing cameras are always poorer, so use the main one. Have a camera so you can, have a tripod so you can put your phone on that and it remains still. It's all about referring back to making life easy for the camera sensor. If it's moving around and it's juddering around, then the stabilization is having to work harder, which means the quality of your content's not going to be as good. So have it on a tripod and then make sure it's, that will at least ensure that the scene is not going to be wobbly, and hopefully it's going to be easier for you to control as well. You're not going to worry about the thing falling over if you're leaning it against something on the desk. Right, moving swiftly onwards, I've got to rattle through this because I'm rambling on again. 100 to 250 pounds investment. GoPros are very good. I'm just going to share my screen here and we'll just very briefly run through some of the options that we have. So the Logitech webcams are excellent. Excuse me about this. The Logitech webcams are excellent for things similar to how we are now, pieces to camera, that kind of thing. For live concerts, I know there's a question, an advanced question about this, and I'm going to refer back to that in the questions. So there are two Logitech cameras that I'd recommend. This one here, which is the 920, which is a regular HD, i.e. 1080. There's that 1080 again. And very affordable. The Brio is a terrific web camera. Logitech again, records very nice audio. This is the next sort of level up, if you like. And this is the kind of fits into this sort of 100 to 150 pound kind of bracket, okay? And now this is a great piece of kit as well, while we're sort of talking about sort of things that make the life easy for us as performers. So this Zoom Q8 will do both things for you. It will record great audio and it will record terrific video as well. Around this sort of price bracket as well is a thing called a Osmo Pocket, which is a gimbal mounted thing, the kind of thing you see on drones. And I happen to have one here. This thing I found really invaluable. Actually, if you're trying to record interesting live footage, if I just have it there, hopefully the camera will focus. Now you'll see this camera head here is entirely stabilized. However I move that, it will stay flat and it will stay straight, and I can run up and down, I can jog around, I can sort of do moving panning shots, and we'll get beautiful, smooth, really nice graded, gradual footage as well. So these are really useful things as well. So this is the Osmo Pocket, and I'll try and put these in the links at the end. So good quality webcams, up to 4K. These are sort of things that will combine both, and if you want to take the live footage to the next level, then the Osmo Pocket. Now, other things to talk about in this price bracket: a tripod, a proper tripod like a Manfrotto B3. Again, this is on the PDF, so don't worry. And entry-level DSLRs, which are just regular sort of photographic cameras, but these days the sort of music capabilities are absolutely fantastic. So. The video capabilities, rather, I should say. I'm looking at chat again. I should not get distracted. So next level up from that, 500 to 750 pounds. Now this is where we're looking at possibly a mid-range DSLR, so maybe with a better sensor that's going to pick up more dynamic range, more color, better in low light situations. Which, let's face it, as performers, most of the video situations we're going to be in are in low light. Concert halls, pubs, that kind of thing. So unless the scene is well lit, which I shall refer to the opening gambit, you're going to be dealing with low light. Now, good quality DSLRs will be able to cope with low light better. I found Sony to be absolutely extraordinarily good for recording music of all different kinds. And what you're looking at now is a Sony. And also we've got the A series in general. This is the sort of compact version, the A6000. Great sensors, and they actually make the sensors for most for Canon and Nikon. So I mean, you're getting kind of the best straight away. So, and gimbals are another thing as well, like the Osmo thing, but actually a camera-mounted gimbal, so it stabilizes. They're not too expensive these days. 100 quid, 150 quid, you can get a reasonable gimbal. Panel lights, we talked about these two things here as well. And these things, lighting, you know, you can spend tens of thousands of pounds on lighting if you want, but you don't particularly need to. Good quality panel lights you can get for around 150 to 200 pounds. That's what these two cost, and they're perfectly good for 90% of the scenarios we'll find ourselves in. So let me check the time. I'm conscious I've got 15 minutes or thereabouts left. So apologies, I'm sort of rushing through this. Hopefully we can sort of take a breather during the Q&A, and I can sort of try and make sense of some of this through there. So editing is the third big area. This is where you can, if I just switch to screen mode. Now, this is a program called Adobe Premiere Pro. This is the program that I use. Other programs that are available, DaVinci Resolve is excellent, Final Cut Pro is excellent, Sony Vegas is another video editing program. They're all very similar. They have their strengths and weaknesses. Premiere is exactly like that. It has its strengths and weaknesses. It's in terms of the workflow, it's very nice and easy. It's not the most stable program out there, but these are, what I've done is I've sort of collated some of I've got 5 or 6 different concerts and various different online things that I've produced over the last year or so, and I'll just be going over some of the basics of editing. Now, those of you who are familiar with audio sequencers this will be a very familiar sight. So when you bring video files in, there's usually a bin on the left here, and you can literally just drag and drop files onto the screen. And if I just zoom in here, this is an 1.5 hour performance, by the way. So if I just zoom into one very small section of it, we have some of the moving cameras, and I've got a wide shot, and you'll see just on that blue line, just here, that's where that join is, so the transition. So we have 2 or 3 different camera shots here. We have an aerial camera. And what I've tried to do with this scene, where I'll be talking about other kinds of scenarios just briefly shortly. This is a live choral concert that was recorded without an audience and released behind a paywall recently. So we have a wide shot, an aerial shot, a moving camera shot, a reverse angle shot. So we've got a nice variety of left. If I go to the wide shot here, we had one of the cameras, you can just about see it in the corner there. Sorry, apologies, it's very small if you're watching on an iPad. We have another camera down here. We've got my moving camera, which is here. That's me standing there. So I've tried to cover 3 or 4 interesting camera angles. Now, the one takeaway point that I want to make here is your wide shot, your default shot, which should cover, I guess, about 80% of your show, should be really nicely composed, well lit, and relatively geometric. And it was geometric until Martha moved. She moved to the left, which set my OCD going wild. But you can imagine her standing there. That would be a really nice balanced scene. And it's something you can default to. And these are kind of interesting B-roll shots that will kind of provide extra content and extra context to the performance. Share some audio here as well. Hopefully you can hear the audio. So this is a concert of Tallis. And I understand Mairead's talked about mic placement, which is really, really good. So the moving camera sort of allows me to just highlight certain performers. Reverse camera, just again for context really, but the most important one is your wide shot. So that's the sort of live scenario. Now, a lot of the things I've been involved with recently have been these kind of virtual choir things. So we'll come on to them in a second. So these are sort of virtual choir scenarios. So choirs that are hoping to sort of remain performing, which is, you know, it's just, it's something that's really tragic about the sort of restrictions that we have at the moment. Is that everyone's fighting to stay relevant as a performer. Now, these are some ideas that I've sort of been playing with. This is a big virtual choir I've just done for the CBSO. So we're actually combining live footage of the orchestra here with a massive virtual choir scene at the top here. So we've got 100 or thereabouts singers here, which are all tiled on top of the scene. So you've got a combination of things here. And I've sort of had some playing around as well to try and... So, forgive me about the glitching. It's like the computer does complain about having to play 140 videos at the same time. So again, these are kind of just examples of things that you can achieve. So I'm using live footage here, and with a combination of virtual footage as well. And you'll see, I'm going to talk about some editing here. So this is a very small, this is a good place to start. So when you're looking to produce a video, just let me check the time. We're all good. When you're looking to produce a video, this is a really useful thing to have, is the branding. Now, I talked very briefly at the top of the show about composing your set and treating it like a brand. Now, this is literally a brand, and you can very cheaply develop or create a brand for yourself to dovetail and bookend your videos, and it's a really good way of achieving that consistency as well. Now, this is there's a few elements here to talk about. This is just a basic virtual choir, but what I've got here is, rather than having no background at all, I've used a background image. Okay, now this is a particularly relevant image to one of this is the conductor from the CBSO, and that's her hometown in Latvia. So I've decided to kind of license a picture of that. So it kind of provides content. Hopefully, what we're doing here, what I've tried to do, is try and make things as nice as possible for the performers. No one likes particularly singing into their phone for hours and hours. So hopefully when they look back at it, it'll make them feel good about performing, which is, let's face it, that's what we're all after. We're all performers. So I've got some basic text element here as well, and again, this is a way of standardizing content, using your typefaces correctly, making sure they're not getting in the way. What I've tried to do is compose the scene as well. So this is the editing version of what I was talking about right at the top. Okay, so geometrically correct. Now, rather handily, Premiere Pro and other video things will have a snap function. That is, you see those red lines that appear? Hopefully, it's not very clear, but there's some red lines that appear that will tell you that clip is exactly in the middle and exactly on laterally in the middle as well. So create a scene that's visually pleasing, okay? I've used some basic 3D elements on this to kind of create the idea of a choir facing each other. All of the programs that I spoke about at the top, it's possible to do this. Closing credits, that kind of thing. It's very easy to do on all of these programs, and it's a nice way of cross-pollinating and cross-marketing as well. If you want to sell products, you can incorporate that into your video as well. So with this, what we're trying to do, it does look a little more complicated than it is, but with this particular section of the video, this is a big finale to the piece, so you've got every singer, hundreds and hundreds of them on screen, and I've used a 3D space, so they're in their performance venue, if you like, even though they're not. So those are the kind of tricks you can do, and you can do that with most of these video editing things. And once your clip is brought in, and you bring your next clip, you can sync it up with the audio, which is very easy these days. A lot of software will have auto sync. This is a pop video thing that I did, and this is using some sort of a mixture of kind of stock footage with the performers as well. So just a quick note, actually, when you're looking to film yourself or film other others, like a band or thereabouts, think about the way that your clip moves. Now you'll notice that this, if I just maximize this so you can see it better, you'll notice that the footage of young Matt here at Vader Studios, I've segued that into a clip of Rob playing the piano. Now, both of those are moving cameras. You see how I'm sort of gliding around right to left? And I've done the same thing with Rob. So hopefully, when you transition between those two scenes, I'll just play that, it gives a nice dynamism to that scene. And it mixes with the music as well. So rather than static footage, which can be a little boring, but it can be nice with the choir performance. It's sort of necessary, really, to have calm. You can be calm with the way that you use cameras, and you can be like this, which kind of is a more rhythmic way of taking camera shots. Now this is Dan's vocals here. So what I've done here is you'll notice this light here, which is that light there. So this is me using this light on set in a recording studio to create this kind of nice visual effect. Now you get a thing called bokeh, which is nice sort of artistic out of focus things. Now I've done these are kind of effects that you can apply in post-production, but I've done, if I just take the effect off, that's without the effect. So that's just the camera straight out of camera. Now the effect I've applied over here is a sort of overlay, like a fake lens flare kind of effect. But it stylizes things, and it's a nice kind of way of, again, I know I'm sort of going through lots of things here, but hopefully I'm sort of just creating ideas for you that you can adapt for videos that you're doing. So split screens, very basic split screen, having two of the performers on, which is a nice way of providing context as well. This is me playing guitar. So again, what I've done is I've overlaid a sort of light leak type of effect, so it looks like there's a big bright light coming from the right, and it's a nice way of styling a sequence up. There's young Rebecca again with the same sort of. So some of this you can achieve if I just take the lighting effect off. You can achieve some of it with the actual light in camera by having it just off the screen, and it creates this nice thing, or you can apply it with a fancy effect in the post-processing. And again, that hopefully ties the whole piece together. There's another little example of a split screen here. If I just play a bit of this. So what I've tried to do there is I've combined the three performers, djembe player, pianist, which is filmed nice and close up. I filmed that on this little Osmo thing, that pianist, and that's the kind of quality you can get off these things. They're amazing, extraordinary pieces of kit. So that was all filmed, and this is just the guitar. It's just me, just here with a static, with a small Sony camera. But again, when it's all applied, it's running a split screen like that. You can get some really nice effects that add to the music, and that's the key here. You're looking to enhance the performance, not detract from it. Now, two ways you can do that. You can either make the performers do an amazing job and just film them, or you can try and sort of, use the sort of skills that you hopefully obtain by kind of trial and error through these sorts of things. Now, there's loads of Domestika is a really good training resource online, and they do all sorts of things, ground up type of training for programs like Premiere Pro and DaVinci Resolve and Final Cut as well. Premiere Rush and iMovie, which are the tablet versions of these things, are terrific as well. And again, that's a way of kind of getting into this without any investment at all. I think the Adobe Premiere Rush I think it's even free. I think it's either that or it's very, very cheap indeed. And it's terrific. You can do split screens, you can do transitions, you have some cinematic effects, you can put logos, you can include sound. So it's basically like a mini version of this. So you'll see a little timeline at the bottom. In fact, I do actually have, I have it on here, so I'll just quickly show you. So iMovie, Premiere Rush, here we are. So when the interface comes up, and they're really nice and kind of user-friendly, these apps. I mean, my son is 8, and he kind of makes films with this app. And so as you'll see here, This is not really an ideal clip. But you see the timeline's very similar. Ooh, excuse me. So it's kind of, there's your clip, and you can scroll along, and then you can edit, you can slice, and you can put other clips on top of clips. So, and again, costs nothing, which is great. And they're improving all the time. So let's try just check the time. So this is the sort of things I've been involved with, but they're kind of reductively, they're exactly the same. They're basically putting one video clip on, following it with another, and then, like you do when you compose a piece of music, you try and get flow in between the sections, okay? And it's exactly the same sort of process as when you compose. And you'll know if a sequence works, because you'll watch it back and it'll be like, and then you'll take a little bit off the start, shift it forward, and then it'll flow. It's trial and error. The only thing, my only kind of warning, if you're going into video editing like this, my only kind of warning, as it were, is that you get ready for this thing to take a lot of time. Now, video editing is incredibly time consuming, and you'll find yourself staring at screens for hours and hours and hours. I've been doing this for years, and it's all I do, stare at screens for hours, hours and hours and hours. Even the things that are supposed to take no time at all take ages. So just be prepared for that, okay? It's incredibly gratifying as well. It's the same sort of feeling, I would say, as when you compose a piece of music and have it played back and hear it for the first time. When you watch, especially when you watch a film that's been published on YouTube or social media back, and you have comments back about it, and it's a great way of sort of kind of maintaining yourself as a performer. Now, I understand that Mairead did a very, very good talk on the audio side of things as well. Now, linking the video and the audio, I think they're very, very similar. I think what we tried to do is we tried to mirror our sort of approach with this. So minimal investment, and then sort of looking at sort of kind of intermediate, and then sort of investing in things and taking them further. Now, it's really important to have a plan with this stuff. If you're going to go into producing content like this, have an idea of the kind of content that you want to create in a year's time and in 5 years' time, just as you did when you were starting out as a performer. It's always good to have an end goal with these things. Monetizing your content, which is something that I think is going to be covered in a later session. I'll have to check on the date of that. But monetizing your content is a great side product to this. And having content online, I have loads of content online that just sits there as a digital product, and people buy it. And I get emails at 11 o'clock at night saying you've just made £8 on Bandcamp. And it's a really good way of having a catalogue of content online that can be bought. And when you do this, you're not marketing yourself to several hundred people like you do at a gig, or several thousand people like you do when you're a teacher in a music service. You're marketing yourself to millions of people on YouTube, on Facebook. And most of my work that I've got from this sort of stuff has been people outside of the UK. And it's a really fantastic way of kind of breaking down borders and kind of working with musicians outside of the UK outside of Europe is a really, really cool thing to be involved with. And these sorts of technologies, they kind of facilitate that. Now then, I'm really conscious that I've been babbling on. So it's 12 o'clock, and I think it's time for some Q&A. Hi, Sarah.
Hi, thanks very much, Simon.
No worries.
Appreciate you getting through so much material per hour.
Let me just put my...
So what we have is a couple of questions that were submitted in advance, and some more coming in there now. So here's the first advanced question we had. Using a Logitech C920 versus an iPhone for video element of music performance video, which would be better?
Yeah.
I have the option of using, along with these video options, either an AKG Lyra USB mics plus Mac plus DAW software, or just the iPhone for sound. Any advice on the best options?
Yeah, well, you've got two different scenarios there. I would say that if you're looking for resolution and fidelity, then you have the option of using a DAW or a digital audio workstation and a Logitech camera. These things are purpose-built for film and audio. An iPhone is purpose-built to do everything. So it kind of depends, really. I'm going to be slightly cheeky and suggest that you use both. So record the audio well, have your Logitech webcam as a stock default thing, and film things on your phone as well. Film some moving footage, some B-roll, film in black and white, something like that, and then cut that in to your mix afterwards. Because, you know, you can do that. You can just say to people, I often do this, you know, and sometimes the B-roll that's accidentally filmed turns out to be absolutely invaluable. So I would say use both.
Great, thank you. And the next question we had in advance, is it possible to stream live and marry software audio with video from a separate device? I.e., one can't edit a live stream in Final Cut.
Yeah, so that's possible. The software is called OBS. If I just cut to here, I'll show you. This is OBS. So OBS is a dedicated streaming software. And what you can do with OBS is that you can choose your audio input and you can choose your video input. Now, just discuss this piece of kit very briefly because this relates to this. This is called a capture card. Now, if you're going to use a camera, you'll need to convert HDMI into USB, and that goes into your computer, which is exactly what you're looking at now. That will give you your video feed. Now, it's exactly the same process with your audio feed just down here. You can choose your audio interface, whichever one you want, and you can just select the two. And that will allow you to live stream with high definition video and audio that's mixed and from multiple mic setups, all of that kind of stuff. It is what you make of it, OBS. It's a terrific program. But yes, it is possible to do that. Now, if you want to stream from your audio sequencer, if you wanted to use sounds from Logic or Reaper or Cubase, or which Pro Tools, whichever you use, you have to use a sidechaining plugin such as Restream, or I think it's called Restream, and that allows you to stream audio from within the sequencer, like Zoom does when I share computer sound. So there's a little bit of a sort of backdoor way of getting audio. But I think your question relates to live streaming from a separate camera and an audio device. And yeah, definitely possible. And people do it all the time. And they use OBS to do it.
Thanks, Simon. And apologies, I'm hearing that my mic is coming out a little bit low. Apologies for that. I hope you can hear me. Here's a question from Francesco. Can you talk about multi-camera live streaming?
Yeah. Okay, so multi-camera live stream. What I can demonstrate it because basically that's what I've been doing over the last hour. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pull the camera off and I'm going to show you briefly a piece of kit that I use. Two things to talk about here, hopefully, when the thing focuses. That is what I use, which is an ATEM Mini, which is a super piece of kit, very affordable, it's a couple of £100, and it allows 4 inputs for HDMI. So most cameras will have, if I just point up there, they'll have a HDMI output, a mini HDMI, and it will basically go into the back of the machine here. And I've currently got 3 feeds into this Vision mixer. In fact, it's like an old school Vision mixer, but it works on HDMI, and it converts all of those signals into USB. So all of those HDMI feeds, however many cameras you want to use, will go into there. One USB thing will come out into your computer, and it's basically the same as I think I just showed you the capture card, but it allows you to use multi cameras. And actually, it's very you'll see it's very quick and easy to change between the settings here, and you can choose your transitions. You can choose to have them really sort of sharp and without any kind of fade. I think it's so it basically cuts really quickly like that. Sorry to give you all a headache. Or you can have it when it fades in nicely like that. So, and the great thing about that is that you can feed audio into that as well. So you can have all of your audio and camera mix going through the same thing, and you can have it, it's just about the size of your hand, and everything's controllable. So yeah, super piece of kit. So yeah, that's what I'd recommend, an ATEM Mini.
Great, thanks, Simon. Hope you can still hear me. Next question Would you recommend a camera for all scenarios, live or in the studio or in the living room?
Yeah, depends on the budget. So perhaps whoever asked the question, perhaps if you can sort of give me a budget and I can make a recommendation. But I would have to say the so you said live and in the studio. Well, in that case, something like the Zoom Q8, which I showed you just briefly, which is this thing here. This is a really useful Zoom. I'm a massive fan of because they make things that are just very, very intuitive. Now you'll see what we've got here. We've got a really, really good kind of wide-angle type of stock lens. Very good quality audio you get from Zoom recorders. These are the same things as the Zoom Handy recorders. Everything's made very easy for you, and it records straight to SD card. Okay, so this is around 250 quid, I think. You can put it on a tripod. I think you can control it via an app as well, which is really, really useful if you're sort of not if you don't happen to be standing behind it, or you happen to be standing off to the side with another camera. You can control the whole thing via an app. So, and you can also with this Zoom Q8, you can put XLR microphone inputs in it as well. So you have the opportunity of using this built-in XY pair or using a really high quality pair of microphones as well. So that's a really good sort of cash all option. And if you're looking to take things up a notch, the big investment with cameras is in the glass. Now, that's the quickest way to get great quality images is good glass, good lenses. Now, built-in lenses, for the most part, are okay. Most Sony bridge cameras, like let's say 6000, or actually this one here, this camera I'm using is an RX100. Now, these are fantastic little things. I picked this up secondhand for about 120 quid, and it records in 4K. It's got a Zeiss lens on it, so they're a good bet as well. Although, the newer ones are quite pricey, but having them secondhand is good. The A6000, these are secondhand are about 300 quid, and they're terrific. Really, really good. Very handy. The only thing I'd say about these is the batteries do tend to run down quite quickly. So that's a sort of look for battery life when you're considering getting a camera for recording video. Look at how it's rated for battery life. So yeah, okay.
Great, thanks, Simon. And we have one more question in the Q&A box. Do type in if you have anything else to ask. Otherwise, we're coming to our last question now. Oh, I see another one in the chat. Here's this one. When filming self-tapes for agents, casting directors, etc., I was told to have a blank background or set. Why is that? What is best for self-tape filming?
I can't say for sure, to be honest, other than the fact that I imagine they want to green screen you and put you in different scenarios. If they're looking to have you in a certain role, if there's a blank background, you can key out all of that thing like we do with you can do with these Zoom backgrounds. You can put yourself in a rainforest or whatever. Also, if they're looking for standardized, if they're looking to judge you as an actor or a musician, then they want everything to sort of be judged on a level playing field. And I would suggest it's probably more likely to do with that.
Great, Simon. And if you decided not to do that and to have some kind of background, what would you recommend? Something simple.
Yeah. So if you Google photographic backdrops, if you go onto eBay and look for photographic backdrops, you'll see a huge range of materials. What you're looking for is something about 3 to 4 meters wide, because most lenses are quite wide angle. See, so by the time you set your camera up, if you get a narrow backdrop, you're going to see the wall either side of it. So aim for getting a big backdrop. This is where you have a decision to make here on the kind of look that you want. You either go for a sort of dark natural wood type of industrial look, or you go for a bright contemporary type of grey, light grey, or like I've got here. I've got this kind of brick effect thing, which looks dreadful, dreadful from that angle, but from the right angle it does look good. You have to trust me on that one. So there's lots of sizes, and they're quite cheap actually. You can, while you're developing your kind of color scheme and your sort of house style, if you like, you can, I mean, 15 or 20 quid, you can get a backdrop like this. And if you think that you're going to go with that and it's going to be a course of your workflow over a year or two, then you can invest in a better one that's slightly heavier, doesn't have any creases and all of that kind of stuff. And it's, the more expensive ones tend to be more non-reflective, which is really handy when you're using panel lights. But yeah, so have a look on eBay for photographic backdrops.
Thanks, Simon. And another question, is there audio interference from hand movement on the Zoom? How do you operate the equipment if you're recording yourself, e.g. the multi-camera feed? Do you use your feet?
So there's two questions there. The first one, yeah, so two approaches to that, and that is to don't hold it, put it on a tripod and leave it alone. If I just have a quick look at that, there usually is some kind of shock mounting on here. Now, I use a Zoom recorder, and it's got a similar arrangement at the top. Now, this thing is very, very sensitive when I'm holding it. So actually you probably have to, this is with the, so that's just me touching it with the XY mic. So yeah, but I think it's a lot better with this. But my advice would be don't hold it. Or if you are holding it, make sure you're having a separate audio input. If you have mics attached to it via the XLR ports, then you're not going to get that as much of that thing. So the other way of getting moving camera footage is to have a fluid head. So you see, film studios will have a tripod with an arm on it, and they'll kind of control the movement very slowly. Now, another way, sorry to be a gadget head, but another way of getting really cool moving camera footage is to have one of these, which is a tracker or a slider. And this is basically a train track, which your camera sits on, and it's got a motor on the end, and you start it, and it will just move along like that. And the great thing about it is you don't have to do anything. You just let it go, and it will keep going. Excuse me. Sorry about that. Pushed the wrong button. It will just keep going until you tell it to stop, and you'll get nice, smooth, sort of fancy, kind of silky smooth footage. So that would be one way of getting moving camera things. The other way is to put it on a fluid head, and the other way is to actually hold the thing, but with the separate mic leads plugged in, so you don't get the kind of, all of the extraneous noise.
Great, thanks, Simon. Next question. Front-facing selfie camera is not as good quality as monitoring from the back. Can you elaborate?
Yeah, so that relates to something I just said, which is glass. Excuse me while I clean my lens, which is hopefully the one thing that people will take away from this if they don't take anything else. So you'll see there's a marked difference when the camera focuses, which it hopefully will do. So there's a marked difference in the size of the glass here as to this little tiny thing here. So the optics here, these are particular ones are designed by Leica, and we're talking fine margins here. But if you have better quality glass and resolution, the sensors are larger for the back-facing for the sort of forward-facing camera, if in the first person, as it were. The sensors are larger than the back one. These are tiny, minuscule. I mean, you only have to look at the videos you take with the selfie versus the front camera, and it will be immediately obvious. Now, small sensor, poorer quality glass, there goes all your resolution. Okay, so that's why.
Thank you. And next question: have you got a brand recommendation for light panels?
Yeah, this Newer, which is spelled N-E-W-E-R, Newer. They do kind of entry-level to intermediate panel lights, and I found them to be very, very reliable, and they come really well. They have their own carry cases, so which is another thing. It's a bit risky, sort of taking things on the road, as we all know. So They've been pretty fail-safe for me so far, and they have great options as well. If I just, this is famous last words, pulling these things out. But on the back, you'll see you have controls. You can have them with batteries in as well, so you don't need to have them plugged in. Or you have controls over the white light and the yellow light, so you can you can sort of experiment, as it were, with using this. That's the white and the yellow. So it's a really nice way of kind of, and it's all on dimmer switches as well. I mean, that's how bright they go. It's just turned off. I pulled the plug out. Never mind. Oh no, there we are. So that's how bright they go. They're incredibly bright, blindingly bright. So very good for live situations, and super for static situations like this. So already regretting lifting that from where it was. Right. Yeah, so Niwa.
Thank you. And next question, they're still coming in.
Good.
Can you talk about what's the best setup for signal stability in a live stream with audio and video?
Yeah. One thing you have to be very careful of when you're live streaming is the sample rates. It's something that occurs quite often. You'll have a default sample rate in a piece of software like, you'll have a default sample rate. You see here, 44.1 kilohertz. You have to make sure your sound card is set to exactly the same sample rate, else you'll get buzzes and clicks and various different things. That's the number one critical thing. Also, do what you do with audio sequences as well, which make sure your buffer size is large enough to cope with the data flow. Making sure that, well, the great thing about OBS, of course, is that you can trial everything in a record mode, like a rehearsal mode. So you can record audio and video and all of your sequences. One of the great things about OBS, down here, you have a scenes. So you can have an intro scene. You can have a pre-recorded video, just literally dragged and dropped onto there. And then you have your live capture device section with your live audio. Then you have your outro, and then you have your logos. And you just literally click with a mouse on the scenes that you want. So you can control the live stream really, really quickly and easy. Yeah, I mean, it is a bit of a stress, but as long as your sample rate is set to the global sample rate of your computer, if it's 48, see, I haven't opened up, I haven't tried this. I only downloaded this. This is a new an update on OBS, and it's defaulted to 44.1. My global sample rate on the computer is 48, as it is with most people. So I would just make sure to have that set at the same sample rate, and then you've got, basically that's going to kind of iron out any issues that are going to occur. So yeah, sorry, say the question again. Is it in the chat? I just want to make sure I've answered that correctly. Hold on.
I just deleted it, sorry.
Oh, it's all right, it's fine. I think that it was to do with glitching, avoiding patchy audio and glitching in live streams.
Yeah, it was about signal stability, how to get the best signal stability.
Yeah, well, that's one way. The other way is when you use a phone to live stream, it presents a rather kind of unrealistic picture of what's achievable. You see live footage from people who've done live streams on their phone, and it looks kind of bitty and it sounds really kind of. If you use OBS, it's completely different, because what it does is it generates a stream key. And when you go to YouTube or Facebook, you'll have the option of entering a stream key when you go to live stream. And then it will route through OBS and into Facebook. So it will bypass all of Facebook's compression algorithms when it comes to audio and visual. So you'll get good quality 1080 video, and you'll get, proper high resolution audio as well. So this is how it's done. This is how people get really good quality live shows, and they're actually live and they're done in real time. It's because OBS sort of bypasses Facebook's algorithm, if you like, using a stream key, and the YouTube's the same. It's quite simple, actually. There's like a 2-minute tutorial on YouTube about how to use OBS with Facebook, and once you've done it once, piece of cake.
Thanks, Simon. Next question. re webcams, do you think the Logitech Brio is worth the extra money over the C920?
What I would say there is that's a decision for you based on how you see your workflow going. If you're doing a lot of video conferencing, a lot of video teaching, a lot of face-to-face things, or you're creating content for a YouTube channel, it's imperative that you have a good quality webcam. Now, the thing is, if we were talking 5 years ago, I would be looking at that at the 920 and with my jaw on the floor, the kind of quality and performance you get from it. These things, like many things, the technologies are really on point. They're improving all of the time. So you'll get a terrific result from the 920. It will look good. You've got stereo sound. You've got 30 frames a second. With the 4K one, the 4K thing is a bit of a red herring. Okay, it's got some other nice features like a high frame rate as well, which can be useful. The best thing to do, I would suggest, if you're looking for a straight comparison, 2 places to start. Look in the spec. You'll see all the extra options that you get. So you get your 30 frames, you get 60 frames a second, 90 frames a second. For the most part, you probably won't be using these. The important thing is the lens, I would say. But the other way to do it is to go on Tech Radar, and it's a superb site which is really unbiased, and it will do it will answer that question exactly for you. It's like, this is exactly what you're getting. I've seen the Brio, and it's an amazing piece of kit. I've also tried the Logitech as well. It's excellent. They're both excellent. The Brio is absolutely extraordinary quality. And the live streaming, because it does have to, there is a certain amount of compression that goes on. If you can get as much high quality things going in, you're going to get a better result coming out. But yeah. Okay.
Thanks, Simon. What was the name of the editing software on the tablet?
Yeah, so if you have an iPad, I would recommend 2 pieces of software. The first one is the one that's bundled with it anyway, which is called iMovie, which is quite limited, but it's pretty good. The other one is Premiere Rush. This is on the PDF that Sarah's got for you. So Premiere Rush. Now it's basically the sort of reductive version of the program that I was showing you. This kind of thing without all of the bells and whistles. In fact, actually, for one of these videos, for the first video, I could have quite easily done that on Premiere Rush. That would have been possible, minus the white frames and the shadows. But yeah, it's a great little program. Very, very easy. Everything's done with one finger. It's just drag and drop, and you can do all your typefacing. It's got a good selection of typefaces. It's got some cinematic presets that you can colorize. And the sort of useful thing with that is you can eyeball stuff. You'll know straight away if things jump out at you. And with a tablet, it's a very quick and easy thing to just now try that or pull that around. And the touch screen element to it really lends itself to video editing. A lot of the top end vision mixing studios use touch screen interfaces. So yeah, that's a kind of nice way of sort of certainly introducing yourself to the idea of producing a timeline on a video editor is using Premiere Rush.
Thanks. And the last question, I think, are there any formats or frame rates or sample rate that is compatible on all online platforms?
Are we talking about live streaming here? Because if you're talking about live streaming, pretty much what you feed into it is what will come out. When you're using a third-party piece of software like OBS, which processes all of the things prior to sending it to Facebook, that's when you've got to concern yourself with sample rates. Frame rates, not really that important at this stage. The great thing about, sorry about my rubbish camera work here, but the great thing about this, I've said pre-recorded live videos. Great, yeah. Okay, so for everything. The great thing about this thing is that it converts every HDMI signal in to the same format out. It converts it all to 30 frames a second and 1080. So when that goes into the computer, it's all sorted for you. Everything's sorted for you. Again, there's a few switches out there, but this is the best by far. It's so intuitive and it's just so easy to use. This is what you're looking to do. You want to remove all the stressful elements. You said so you did pre-recorded live videos and live streaming. Yeah. So for pre-recorded live videos, you have to check with your camera. It depends if you're going to use the audio off the camera, but if you're going to use if you're going to use multiple audio sources, you have to make sure that the sample rates are the same. For most, I mean, most audio sequencers and video sequencers will do their best at converting everything. So if you provide 25 frames per second footage with 30, it will kind of do the maths and it will be all right. But if you're using over 5 or 10 minutes, there will be drift and you'll end up with things that are. So my advice is to always make the sequencer's job as easy as possible by standardizing the kind of frame rate that you're using and the sample rate. So I think that's answered the question. I haven't missed anything there, right?
Yeah, thanks very much, Simon. So I think that's all of our questions, and it just remains for me to thank you for that brilliant presentation and also really useful, really practical Q&A. I think people are able to ask their very specific questions. And I thank all of our very attentive attendees today and invite you to join us again tomorrow at 11 a.m. when David Taylor is going to bring us through the different platform choices for musicians performing online. When you leave the webinar today, you'll be directed to a survey, which we'd really appreciate if you could take about a minute to fill that in. There'll also be a link to the survey in your Zoom follow-up email, the automated email. So we really appreciate your feedback because it'll help inform our future events. So it remains for me to thank all of you, thank Simon one last time, and say goodbye.